Now is a whole bunch of renewed political drama around the Russia investigation. Over the weekend and through the course of today and tonight, it's starting to feel like a switch has been flipped in the fight or flight circuit board that controls the conservative id on this story. Over the last several days, into today and tonight, a pretty good portion of the American right has decided to declare that the new conservative crusade in America will be that former FBI Director, Special Counsel Robert Mueller should be fired. That's the new crusade. Some switch somewhere flipped. And now on the American right, we're getting this deluge of increasingly excited calls to action that Special Counsel Robert Mueller must be fired. And if it takes shutting down the whole FBI to shut down the Russia investigation, then so be it, and good riddance. And it does almost feel like a coordinated messaging decision on the right. It's everywhere from a conservative op-ed writer in USA Today to the Wall Street Journal editorial page, which has been leaning in this direction for a while, but they're getting increasingly strident and insistent on this point. The Fox News Channel, honestly, they've been spanking this tambourine for a while now, but as of this weekend and today, they are just really going for it all of a sudden. I don't know what flipped for the right that is causing this freakout, but this fire Mueller freakout on the right has led, in turn, to a whole bunch of ominous warnings from some very sober people about what this might portend, what this might be the preamble for in terms of action by the president. Here's Max Boot writing at Foreign Policy today. America is heading for an unprecedented constitutional crisis. The Republican Party is ready to serve as an accomplice to the obstruction of justice. Here's John Chait at New York Magazine. Quote, "The Mueller investigation is in mortal danger." Here's David Graham at The Atlantic. "The partisan nihilist case against Robert Mueller." Here's the good and great E.J. Dionne at The Washington Post. Quote, "The attacks on Mueller push us closer to the precipice." So over the last few days, everybody watching this story, everybody watching this investigation, left, right, and center, appears to be feeling the same sort of tectonic shift, signifying what might be about to happen next. And I don't know if the Mueller investigation is now so unnerving the White House that they are going to try to dismantle it or blow up that investigation somehow. But if we do get to that kind of a crisis point, at least none of us will be able to say that we weren't warned. Everybody's throwing red flags over the possibility of firing Robert Mueller on both sides of the aisle right now.
They don't on their face show Russian involvement, but what they do show is enormous amounts of capital flowing into these projects from unknown sources. At least on paper, it says it's from the Trump Organization, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And these golf courses are just, they're sinks. They don't actually make any money. Quote, "There's good reason to believe he would have had to have outside financial support for these things." And it's true. Trump's courses in Scotland and Ireland, the only ones for which detailed financial information is available, show huge losses. Trump's Dunebeg course in Ireland lost millions over the past 2 years. While in Scotland, Trump has poured nearly $200 million into his two courses without either of them turning a profit. So, where did that investment money come from? On a trip to Scotland during the campaign, candidate Trump said he paid in straight cash.
The hotel is, I didn't even put a mortgage on. We have no debt, no financing, no anything. And I wanted to do that with Turnberry. I don't want to have any financing on Turnberry because it's so special. So I just did this out of cash flow. And we just have, we have an absolutely zero debt.
Beyonce in a conversation with the legendary rapper Jay-Z, really opening up about marriage to his, quote, soulmate fiance. Watch.
What is it about this marriage that's so special that you would fight this hard to save it?
Well, it's my soulmate. It's the person I love, and you can be in love with someone. You can love someone and and if you haven't experienced love and you don't understand it and you don't have the tools to move forward, then you're going to have complications, period. And if you can either address it or you can pretend until it blows up at some point. And, for us, we chose to fight for our love, for our family, to give our kids a different outcome. You see, to break that cycle. For black men and women, you know, to see a different outcome, like you were saying. It's not this celebrity couple. We were never a celebrity couple. We were a couple who just happened to be celebrities.
That's beautiful.
Like real people.
Van Jones is with us now. So Van, Jay-Z, Beyonce, they have 3 young children. They just had twins last year, of course. What more did he say about the challenges of balancing his family and his high-profile career?
You know, it was so funny. He was so honest, and I mean, this is a side of Jay-Z I don't think many people have seen outside of maybe his inner circle. I mean, he got very honest. He talked about how the twins are so little that they can't move and, you know, run around. They're 7 months old, so they can't walk and cause chaos and destruction. So, yeah. But we're worrying about, you know, when that changes, how they're going to be able to manage it. You know, just talking about regular dad stuff. Yeah. He also talked again about going to therapy, because, you know, there's a big stigma in the black community against going to therapy.
There's a stigma in our country about
going to therapy. Yeah, maybe it is. I know, you know, for African Americans, as scared as we are of the cops sometimes, we're more scared of therapists. And so I said, you know, how did you, but you went to therapy and you talk about it publicly. And he explained it in such a powerful way why. I asked him about his mom. You know, his mother came out of the closet, you know, she had been a closeted lesbian for, you know, years, decades. And how that felt for him, and the pride that he had talking about that. And I challenged him. I said, you know, a lot of people say that you may love that person, but that lifestyle is wrong.
He's not embarrassed by it.
Oh, no. I mean, so far, and proud. And the minute I challenged him and said, well, you know, some people think that lifestyle is wrong, he said, that's just discrimination and bigotry, and just went right after it. He talked about the Me Too movement. Yeah. I mean, as a father of daughters.
And a husband, a powerful woman.
Yeah, and he broke down how powerful men deal with power and sex. And people were like, whoa. I mean, so...
Yeah. You told me you were processing still up in the green room after this interview.
The whole team.
Because you were just so surprised. Sounds eye-opening, and he was so
He was just
honest,
he was so honest, so confessional. And I think that's what's missing in our society right now. You know, hip-hop used to just be all braggadocious and accusatory. I'm great, you suck. And now politics has become that way. My party's great, your party sucks. All of a sudden, he breaks with that, and he's doing confessional hip-hop in his album. He's doing confessional videos. He might be opening up a space in our culture. Maybe we can kind of let our guard down a little bit, be a little bit more honest, talk about what's really going on, as opposed to all this projection and accusation. But listen, I had my, you know, just like you have your questions, I had my questions in my hand. It just went a whole other way.
You threw them out and you said, this conversation's too good.
Yeah, man.
Let me ask you, no doubt people are going to be tuning in for Jay-Z's interview, and I can't wait to see that. But you also have a really insightful segment in your show tonight. You have your van in the van.
Yes.
You took it to Charlottesville, Virginia, which, of course, was the seat of the deadly protests earlier this year involving white supremacists. Let's take a sneak peek.
How do you feel when you see that sign that says Heather Higher-Way?
Rest in peace, baby. A mother's child is gone. A community member is gone.
There were a number of people, including the president of the university, who said, don't go downtown, stay away from downtown.
Somebody might mistake you as saying it was Heather Heyer's fault for coming down here.
No, I don't feel that it was her fault.
People of good, sound mind did not believe the way to handle the situation was to pretend that they weren't there and nothing was going to happen.
So explain to us what you were trying to accomplish through this.
You know, I believe in dialogue. I don't believe people have to agree with each other. In fact, in democracy, the whole point is you don't have to agree. Dictatorship, you have to agree. Democracy, you get to disagree. But you have a responsibility to try to understand. And what's happening is not only are we disagreeing, we're now disrespecting, disregarding, not even listening. So I said, listen, let's get this van. My producer had an idea. Let's get a van and put van in a van, put a bunch of cameras in there, go to Charlottesville, and put 2 white conservatives who support the monuments, not the Nazis, but support the monuments, and a black liberal who doesn't, and let's just drive around together. So we drove to the monuments. We drove to the site where Heather Heyer died, and they talked. And it got tense, and then it got a little bit better. I don't think anybody changed their position, but I think they changed their level of insight and understanding. And just that is enough sometimes to bring the temperature down. It was powerful. It was emotional. part of the Van Jones show, the whole point of the show, is I want to bring into the conversation people who aren't usually in it. So whether it's pop stars who you don't hear from that often on politics, let them have a seat at the table, but also regular grassroots folks who you know, we talk about, oh, Charlottesville, Flint, Michigan, Ferguson. These aren't sound bites. People live there. People were born there. When the cameras leave, they're still there.
So true.
I want to go back to those places and hear from those people and get their wisdom out to the country, because that's how we're going to learn and grow and become better.
And maybe it will help us all to
son. He lives in Rockland County, and he wrote me a letter, and he asked me for help. So I said, come on in, let's talk about it. And then I decided to invite him to Washington, because I do think when more people, Democrat or Republicans, really understand who these dreamers are, they are more supported. He went to school here. This is the only country he really knows. He's married. He works hard. He's successful. And so he's coming to Washington with me.
We do hear from all sides, from the president, the Republicans in Congress, as well as Democrats, that these dreamers need to be protected. So we have this deal. The president is proposing $1.8 million, not million dollars, 1.8 million citizens should have a path to citizenship. These undocumented immigrants, including the dreamers, we know current dreamers account for about 800,000 people. So he's saying more than that should get a path to citizenship. But in exchange, he says, let's get $25 billion for a wall, eliminate the diversity lottery, scale back family reunification, also known as chain migration. Can you see yourself and your colleagues supporting this kind of a plan? Everybody giving a little and getting something in return?
Look, we've been operating under a continuing resolution. October, November, December, January. There's no budget. When you put a budget together, Democrats and Republicans sit down and work it out. Remember, Chuck Schumer, the head of the Senate, offered the president a $25 billion wall. That whole deal blew up. I think if we can sit down, Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate, work out a budget, and in that context, remember, Secretary Mattis is requesting a huge increase, which is over $700 billion. And Secretary Mattis understands that you have to fund the non-defense part in addition to the defense part. Right, so as we look at all these numbers and we look at the amount of money that the president wants for defense, and we haven't dealt with it yet even this year. We're up to the next year now.
You've taken the leap to defense spending, but we're talking about the immigration bill here. Are you saying that this immigration plan will have to be tied to whatever the next budget bill is?
What I am saying, the way the Congress operates is you have to have a total budget. You can't prescribe money for a wall or even technical equipment if you don't have a whole budget. And we're 4 months behind for 2018. Secretary Mattis is already looking at 2019.
Gotcha. I want to ask you about Russia, and so I'm going to move forward here because we learned this week so much in the Russia investigation.
It's hard to even keep up with it.
It really is. Another two separate bills we understand in the Senate that have been proposed to protect the special counsel, Robert Mueller. Are you hearing anything about that happening in the House?
It is outrageous to me that there would even be consideration on the part of this president or whatever people who work for him to even think about dismissing the special representative Mueller. He is doing, according to all the information we have, a very thorough job, and we have to let him do his work. But to even think of dismissing him is outrageous.
Are you worried the president will try to?
The president tweets in the middle of the night. He tweets in the middle of the day. You really know that he is spontaneous in his way of evaluating a situation. So I don't know what he's going to do today. I don't know what he's going to do tomorrow. But if he even thinks of dismissing Mueller, it would be a huge mistake. And I think there would be bipartisan support strongly against that action.
Too early to talk impeachment?
I'd rather continue to talk Mueller's investigation. I want to hear what he's found. I want him to report to the Congress, and I think that's the best way to proceed.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Nina Lowey. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Well, legendary rapper and music mogul Jay-Z walked by my office door a short time ago, causing one of those double takes. He is helping CNN's Van Jones, kicking off.
Defendant or fighting back can really mean obstruction. What you have to do is respond to the process. It is not the same as being in a courtroom. It is not the same as being on the street fighting. You're subject to you're not allowed to do anything to disrupt the criminal justice process. Otherwise, you're involved in obstruction of justice.
A lot more to discuss with us. CNN presidential historian Douglas Brinkley, CNN legal analyst Paige Pate, and director for the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, Larry Sabato. So, Paige, moments ago we just heard from John Dean there saying that Trump's use of the phrase fight back may be a poor word choice. Do you agree?
I think it's more than that, Anna. In fact, I think it is evidence of obstruction of justice. All of the things that you put up on the screen, the things that President Trump has done during the course of this investigation, they're all legal steps that a president can take. I mean, he can remove the FBI director, he can criticize the FBI, he can do all of those things as president so long as the reason for doing them is not under a corrupt intent. He's not trying to protect himself. But when he comes out and publicly says, this is my attempt to fight back, then I think it's crystal clear that all of his actions are an attempt to protect himself and perhaps people close to him from the consequences of this investigation. And if that's why he's doing these things, that can be obstruction of justice.
So if there is proof of obstruction of justice as you perceive it now, what does Robert Mueller do with that?
Well, he continues to investigate, ultimately hoping, I think, to sit down with the president, not necessarily Mueller himself, but someone in the special counsel's office, and give some very direct and specific questions to the president to try to see what his intent was when he took these actions. And I am certain that if that interview does occur, the president will be confronted with some of the statements that he has made, some of the inconsistent statements that he has made, perhaps setting up not just an obstruction case, but a false statement case as well.
Larry, we've just learned there's a couple bipartisan bills now being pushed on Capitol Hill to protect the special counsel. But get this, they will be proposals in government funding bills, so attached to the next CR. Smart idea?
Well, they have to try and do something. I think there is a real fear, legitimate fear, that if cornered, President Trump will try to fire Bob Mueller. Obviously, he did try earlier in the year in June. The amazing thing is that with all of the resources of all of these news organizations and all the sources they now have confirming that President Trump did indeed want to fire Bob Mueller, you still have President Trump calling it, quote, false news, fake news. Mm-hmm. It is not fake. It is not false. So I think it's the right assumption that he'll try to do it. He'll make a terrible mistake if he does. He needs to go back and review what happened to President Nixon after the Saturday Night Massacre when Nixon fired Archibald Cox, the independent counsel. I think there'll be massive opposition. I think people will pour into the streets if he does it.
Douglas, are you seeing more comparisons to Richard Nixon?
Well, there's no question about it. Everybody's Nixon bell is being rung. I think that one of the things that's so surprising about Trump's attempt to fire Mueller is that this hasn't leaked out before now. That means there's a lot of covering up going on in the White House, that this hasn't leaked sooner. And everybody in the White House has to be very fearful. Just to even be in an environment with Donald Trump and working in government is dangerous. You know, Harry Truman used to famously say, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. And Donald Trump saying, I love the heat, bring on the heat. But he now has radioactive heat around him, Donald Trump. This last bit of news about wanting to get rid of Mueller is a big, almost a guarantee that obstruction of justice is going to be levied at him when the report comes out.
You know what else is really interesting about all these revelations is now we realize that about maybe 3 officials have threatened to resign under Trump. We have Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who apparently threatened after Trump expressed his anger over him recusing himself from the Russia probe. We have FBI Director Christopher Wray apparently threatening to leave after being pressured to fire top FBI officials. And now White House counsel Don McGahn, as the reporting goes, threatened to step down after Trump ordered him to fire Mueller. So, Larry, just how unusual is it for 3 top officials to threaten to resign in a president's first year?
Yeah, emphasize the first year. It's hard to imagine what's coming in year 2 and year 3 and year 4, assuming he serves out the term. Look, I'm sure for some of those officials it might be a relief to leave the administration. They'd certainly have reduced legal fees. It's frightening for many of these Trump advisors and staff members who are lower level, but who have to lawyer up. And they don't have the resources for that. Their government jobs don't pay that much. But it's another warning signal about President Trump, what he does, what he's willing to do, and what he simply doesn't understand about the presidency.
Paige, just think, what if they didn't threaten to resign? What if they followed through on what the president was asking them to do? Where would we be?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about the special counsel that we have to remember. It's not an independent counsel. I mean, we got rid of that law, so the special counsel serves at the pleasure of the leadership of the Department of Justice, and of course that leadership serves at the pleasure of the president. So the special counsel is only as independent as the president allows the special counsel to be, and that's a major problem. So if you want to have any objectivity and be comfortable and confident that the special counsel is going to be free from improper influence, you have to do something to make that office separate and apart from the Department of Justice, in my opinion, when you have a president like this who's shown his interest in trying to influence what's going on in that investigation.
Douglas, should people threatening to resign be the only check on the president's power? I mean, where are Republicans who have control of Congress?
The Republicans are running for midterm elections in November, and they're desperate not to get on the bad side of Donald Trump. We can see the strategy of 2018 unfolding. The Mueller report's going to charge obstruction of justice. Trump's going to say it's just fighting back. It's going to be very ugly. You're going to lose some Republicans. It looks like a very good year for the Democrats to win Congress, but not the Senate. And hence, Congress will move to impeach Donald Trump, but that happened to Bill Clinton. The Congress impeached him, but when it went to the Senate would not. And I think Donald Trump's straw, his island of last resort, is going to be that the Senate won't move to impeach him. And although it's an ugly year for Republicans, he'll be in 2019 back on his feet, just like Bill Clinton became the comeback kid.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate the conversation. Larry Sabato, Paige Pate, Douglas Brinkley, thank you all.
Thank you, Anna.
Still to come this hour, the president says he will support a pathway to citizenship for nearly 2 million undocumented immigrants as long as he gets $25 billion for his border wall. Will Democrats take that deal, or are we headed for potentially another government shutdown? Journal publishing allegations that some of his casino and resort employees were pressured to perform sex acts. Dozens of people describe a pattern of sexual abuse and harassment around Steve Wynn going back decades. Our White House correspondent is Boris Sanchez. Boris, Wynn is a man the president has called, quote, a great friend. What is the reaction to these developments from the White House?
Hey there, Anna. On background, a White House official tells CNN that the president supported Wynn's resignation in order to limit political damage to not only the Republican Party, but also to the White House. There were some questions about how the president would respond to this, not only because he and Wynn have known each other for 34 years. President Trump handpicked Steve Wynn to be the finance chair at the RNC, but also because historically this White House has been inconsistent when it comes to answering questions about sexual assault allegations. Just a few months ago, you had the White House simultaneously demanding the resignation of former Senator Al Franken while backing Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore. In this instance, the president clearly distancing himself from Steve Wynn in light of these allegations. We should note, Anna, we don't have an official response from the White House yet.
And Boris, the White House also dealing, of course, this weekend with those reports about Special Counsel Robert Mueller that the president tried to have and fired, but was talked out of it because the president is now calling it fake news. How are others there in Washington reacting?
Well, we got a statement from White House attorney Ty Cobb, and I want to put it on your screen now because it's noteworthy for a multitude of respect for the office of the special counsel and its process. For one, there's no denial there that President Trump tried to fire Robert Mueller, as there was in a previous statement when asked in August about a potential firing of Robert Mueller. Ty Cobb then said, quote, "That's never been on the table, never. It is a manifestation of the media." In light of that reporting by the New York Times that CNN has matched, some Democrats have renewed a push to pass legislation that would protect the special counsel. One congressional Democratic aide telling me that the plan is to bring the idea to the table during budget talks and potentially present some proposals. You had a multitude of senators calling for this kind of legislation, including Senator Chuck Schumer, who said in a statement that this is the most important thing for Congress to do right now. You also had Senator Mark Warner pushing this idea. Here's more of what Warner said.
I think if the president had gone through with this or tries to go through with it on a going forward basis, we're into uncharted territory. We're into the real question of the fundamentals of our democracy. Are we still going to be a country where rule of law pervades and that no one, even the president, is above the law? My hope will be come next week that the Congress would take up bipartisan legislation that was around last year that would protect the special prosecutor from these kind of arbitrary actions.
Anna, Democrats are going to need Republicans to pass any bill of this sort. I asked a Republican operative that's close to the leadership what the chances of them bringing this to the floor might be. He said it is unlikely, in part because it exposes divisions within the Republican Party. While two of these bills that would protect Robert Mueller have Republican co-sponsors, others, like Senator Mitch McConnell,
Boris,
have said
got to stop
that this
you there.
is not a
Sorry, we have
priority.
breaking news, and we're going live to Kentucky. This is a press conference regarding a school shooting earlier this week.
And the biggest heart. Our faith is getting us through, and God is giving us the strength right now, and will continue to in the days ahead. As we take today and tomorrow to honor and remember Preston, we know that he is in a better place, and we will see him again.
My name is Tracy Tubbs, and I'm the aunt of Bailey Nicole Holt. I will be releasing a statement on behalf of the family today. We would first like to extend our condolences to Brian, Teresa, and Maddox Cope for your loss. We will continue to pray for your family. Bailey's parents want the world to know one detail in her final moments. On January 23rd at 8:10 a.m., when the shots began, Bailey made a call to her mom, Secret. Of course, we assumed she intended to tell her mother the catastrophic events unfolding. Unfortunately, it was too late, for she was taken from this earth. By the time her mother answered the phone, Bailey was gone. We have since been informed that Bailey did not suffer. She was surrounded by staff working relentlessly on her to try and save her, but to no avail. This has become a point of comfort for her parents, as they believe that it was Jesus calling Bailey home, and he wanted her parents to know she is safe with him. How great our Lord and Savior is. He chose us to have this beautiful creature in our lives for 15 short but magnificent years. Our anger is evident, our grief is gut-wrenching, but hear our voices today that this act of violence that was intended to inflict incredible pain has done quite the opposite, only reinforcing our family and friends and community to simply say, "Not today, Satan. You've picked the wrong community and definitely the wrong family." Our faith in our community has been restored and our faith in our Savior reignited. We will get through this, and we will be more like Bailey going forward. We will hug tighter, we will love harder, and we will be more present with our families. We give glory to God knowing our sweet angel is running down the streets of gold, wearing her black Converse shoes and her Louisville Cardinals sweatshirt. She was simple, she was easy to love, and she was the salt of the earth. We want to thank all of you here today for giving us a platform to be a voice for Bailey and Preston. We would also like to extend our deepest gratitude to the first responders, Principal Greer, Superintendent Trent Lovett, local and national officials, Governor Bevin and First Lady Glenna Bevin, Lieutenant Governor Janine Hampton, Resource Officer Ray Chumbler, County Attorney Jeff Darnell, Kentucky State Police, the FBI, the ATF, everyone at the hospitals, And lastly, the teachers and staff who worked tirelessly trying to save our girl. This separation is merely temporary, and Bailey, your light will continue to shine as long as we have a voice. Thank you.
Tracy, can you maybe speak on the U.S.A? I know that the parents have said she was married in the U.S.A t-shirt. Maybe just talk about her love for sport.
Okay. Her whole family on her father's side are diehard Louisville Cardinals fans. They have been since I've married into the family. And when I say she was simple, she was very simple. She was a sweatshirt kind of girl every day. Jeans, Converse, but she was comfortable in her own skin. She does have on a Louisville sweatshirt. The University of Louisville actually sent her 2 jerseys of her favorite players, and they've been nothing but extraordinary to our family.
Can you share with us a couple of your favorite memories that you've had personally with Bailey?
Mm-hmm. Bailey was an old soul. She loved rock and roll music from like AC/DC and Van Halen and everything that I did not like. So anytime we were in the car together, she would change my station to Hair Nation and just to agitate me. And but she seriously lived for that music. She loved it, and she knew that I did not. So she liked to taunt me with that.
How much will she be missed in your eyes?
She's a void that we cannot fill ever. She was one of the quietest members of our family. Obviously, I like to talk, so she didn't get that from me. But the things that she didn't say spoke louder than the things that she could have. She was easy to love. She was perfect. She was 15, and I have 2 smaller children, a boy 7 and a girl 10. And her and my son were very close. And instead of a normal night out with a 15-year-old to the movies, anytime we were in town, she would spend that time with her cousins. Not because she was told she had to, but because she wanted to.
Jackie, can you talk a little bit about Preston and his hobbies?
Yes, Preston enjoyed the outdoors. When Brian and Teresa speak about him, they mention his love of baseball. Of course, he was a member of the Marshall County baseball team and loved the St. Louis Cardinals. His dad speaks about one of the greatest opportunities that Preston had was to be able to play on the at Busch Stadium whenever the high school team got to play there, I believe last year. And he said that's a memory that they're going to hang on to for forever. He also loved history. They in the past year, I believe they took a trip, and Preston got to kind of choose where they went, and different places like Gettysburg and places like that. But he loved history, loved outdoors, and most of all, he loved his family very much.
His parents were able to go out to school at the time. I think seeing him on the stretcher, telling him that they loved him. Can you take us into that conversation?
I'm not going to comment on that.
This is for either one of you, just overall the support nationwide. How remarkable is that in your eyes that everybody comes together and they care so much for Bailey and Preston?
We've had celebrities, approach us. Social media just takes everything to a whole new level. And so the gifts and the outreach with, money coming in and food, and you just can't imagine. I think people, when they're mourning with you, everybody has a talent and a hobby and a gift, and they use that gift. We just received can you open that? We just received a drawing today from someone. No one knows this person, but he did this artwork of Bailey, and this is something that we'll treasure forever. So I hope he's watching, and I hope he knows that this means the world to us. But everything from handkerchiefs with her name embroidered on them, or a thumbprint, just things like that you don't think about. People just are mourning, and in order to get over that mourning, they just want to do and give. And this community has been absolutely wonderful. The police have stepped in and tried to keep our privacy, which you guys have been amazing as well. You've been very courteous, and at the time that we do want to speak, you allow us to speak on our own terms, and the times that we need to step back, you have done that as well, and we really, really appreciate that.
How are Bailey and Preston's families supporting each other during this?
I mean, I know that I don't know that there's much to say.
It's kind of neat how we're all related.
The whole community is so tight knit, and there are just so many things that have overlapped. Just over the years of Preston and Bailey being in school together. I can't say enough about how tight knit this community is, and how much they are supporting each other now. And I know in the days ahead it will be the same. So.
And right before we came out, Jackie and I were looking at a picture that someone had found, and Preston and Bailey were in kindergarten.
They were in kindergarten.
Right beside each other. And so they started school together, and then they ended school together. So.
Tracy, you repeatedly used the phrase, be like Bailey.
Right.
Do you see that going anywhere?
It's gone so far already. We're really shocked that it's gone as far as it has, but a lot of people have said, well, what is it to be like Bailey? A friend of ours suggested, she said, that's my gift to you. That's all I can come up with. She said, I can't cook, but I came up with this, and it was wonderful. Hashtag Be Like Bailey would be to just be kind, simply be kind, to love your family more, to, again, hug tighter, put down your cell phones at dinner and have real conversations, and be friends with everyone. It's easier to be kind than it is mean. So that's what it would be to be like Bailey.
Thank you all.
You've been listening to a press conference with family members and friends of two high schoolers who were killed earlier this week when a classmate of theirs opened fire inside their high school in Kentucky, in Benton, Kentucky. You're looking at pictures of the two 15-year-old victims. There's Bailey there on the left, Bailey Holt, and Preston Cope there on the right. Bailey died inside the school. Preston Cope was taken to the hospital where he passed away. A total of 16 people were shot, so more than a dozen people were injured and hospitalized. Authorities still are not identifying the 15-year-old suspect, but he is under arrest, waiting his next court appearance. Detained, he did face a judge on Thursday, is facing currently 2 counts of murder and 12 counts of first-degree assault. Again, this shooting happened on Tuesday. Not a lot has been revealed in the investigation, again, because it involves a juvenile suspect. But what we're learning now about the victims as we paint a greater picture of their lives from the family members who just spoke. We heard about Bailey. She was very kind, simple, somebody who was easy to love. Salt to the earth is how her aunt described her, and she talked about her being a diehard Louisville fan, often wearing a sweatshirt to cheer on the team. We also heard from Jackie Reed, who is the principal at Sharp Elementary, where Preston Cope's mom is a teacher, and she talked about Preston being somebody who enjoyed the outdoors, who loved baseball and the St. Louis Cardinals in particular, who was interested in history, loved his family. Again, two 15-year-olds, their lives simply cut too short at the time there in that shooting that happened earlier this week in Benton, Kentucky. Our Kaylee Hartung was there at that press conference, is joining us now. Kaylee, you've spent some time in the community there. How are they processing this?
Well, Anna, you heard both Jackie and Tracy through that press conference reference how tight-knit this community is, and how much the families of Bailey and Preston have appreciated the support that they have felt throughout this community and extending much farther across this country. I spoke with a couple of students from the high school this morning, and something that they shared with me was just the mix of emotions they are feeling today in particular as the visitation is being held at the high school. As we speak, the two women you just heard speak here now on their way to the high school, just about 500 yards down the road to participate in that event. But students telling me that the gymnasium where that visitation is being held is a place where they have so many carefree, joyful memories in there throughout their high school experiences, like basketball games and pep rallies. And of course they want to honor Preston and Bailey, but they are having a hard time processing the idea of celebrating their lives and memorializing them in a space that they're very unfamiliar with having those type of emotions in. Emotions still very raw as people here try to return to a sense of normalcy, but for the Holt and Cope families, there will be a new normal.
Such a sad story. Kaylee, what do we know about what happened?
Well, Anna, investigators aren't sharing much with us because that 15-year-old male suspect, a student from Marshall County High School, is a juvenile and is being charged as such currently. I'm told that we shouldn't expect any confirmation from officials until a grand jury meets on February 13th, where prosecutors say they do plan to ask that the suspect be charged as an adult. But until then, it's hard to nail down details of that investigation other than accounts we've heard from eyewitnesses that day. It was around 7:57 a.m. on Tuesday when shots first rang out. Students, I'm told, were gathering in the common area of Marshall County High School on Tuesday morning, as they do before classes and assembly begins. It was then that this student pulled out a handgun and began firing upon his classmates. This is a large high school within it. So in that moment, in such a large space where students are congregating early in the morning, they began running. Some dropping their belongings in place and fleeing for their lives from this common area. To do that, I haven't been able to get onto the school's campus, but from a distance, you're able to see the common area. It was sort of within a courtyard, if you will, so you have to run through doors. We've heard stories of hundreds of kids pouring out of the glass doors where otherwise buses would be pulling up to drop off students. One young woman told me a story of how she had just pulled up thinking she was late for school, had just gotten out of her car when she heard the shots and saw all of the students running towards her. She was able to jump back in her car and safely get away from campus, but just a scene of tremendous chaos that is truly unimaginable for high school students or adults, for that matter, to experience.
Kaylee Hartung, thank you for that. We'll be right back.
Burnett out front. Stories that matter.
You've got the money and you've got the passion, but how do you actually make a difference?